Sunnahfollowers, protectors of the Sunnah, Sunnahfollowers, protectors of the Sunnah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Wa salam Allah wa Rasulullah. Welcome to another session of Sunnahfollowers Hadith class. And this is a Hadith class wherein we discuss Hadiths that relate to issues that pertain to women. And with that said, let's put the Hadith that's up for discussion today on the screen so we can go ahead and review it. And this is a hadith that is authentic. In fact, the source of this hadith is Sahih Bukhari. And it's narrated by Abu Sa'id Al-Khudri. Abu Sa'id Al-Khudri. He said, on the day of the Eid al-Fitr, or either it was the Eid al-Adha, the Prophet went out to the praying area. And after finishing the prayer, he delivered a sermon. And then when he finished the sermon, he commanded the people to give in charity. And he said, "O people, give in charity." Then he went towards the women and said, "O women, give in charity, because I have seen that the majority of the people of the hellfire were you women." And the women asked him, they said, "O messenger of Allah, why is it that we will be more than men in hell?" He said, "Well, because you curse frequently and you are ungrateful to your husbands." He said, "Also, I have not seen anyone more deficient in intelligence and religion than you. Oh, women, some of you are so conniving that you can lead a wise man astray." And then he walked away. And when he reached his home, Zainab, who was the wife of Ibn Masud, came to him, and she asked permission to come in to talk to him. And so he said, "Okay, let her in." And then she said, "O Prophet of Allah, today you ordered people to give in charity, and I had an ornament and intended to give it as charity, but Ibn Masud said that he and his children needed the money from it more than anyone else." The Prophet then told her, he said, "Ibn Masud has spoken the truth. Your husband and your children have more right to it than anyone else." But Ibn Masud said that he and his children deserved it more than anyone else, she said. The Prophet said, "Ibn Masud spoke the truth. Again, your husband and your children have more right to it than anyone else." And so what the Prophet meant by that is that if a woman sees that her children and her husband are in need, she gets more blessings giving to them first, because again, charity begins at home. Before you take something and give it to a stranger, if you know that your husband and your children need food, your husband and children need clothing, then the woman should give to help take care of them, and Allah will give you a reward for that. So that's one lesson that you learn from this, that if a woman helps her husband and to provide for the family, she will receive a reward for that. And it would be better for the woman to help her husband to take care of the children rather than to give her money away to someone who is less deserving, because Islam teaches us that charity begins at home. And then in regards to the other part of this hadith, we talked about this many times, why there will be more women in hell than men. Well, we are more emotional. When the Prophet ﷺ spoke about the deficiency in intelligence and religion, he was speaking about what we know to be PMS. PMS. We women suffer with this thing called PMS. And PMS impacts the way we think. When he said intelligence, he meant the way we think. We are easily manipulated into thinking in regards to how we think by whatever chemicals are going through our body at certain times of the month. We become more emotional. We become detached and things like that. So that's what he meant. He wasn't saying that women were less intelligent than men. What he was saying is that we are more emotional. And we suffer from chemical imbalances that affect our way of thinking more than men do. That's also why the testimony of two women equals the testimony of one man. Because if a woman is going through PMS, we hear what we want to hear, or we may hear certain things, that and not hear others and not remember other things. So this hadith does not mean that women are less intelligent. Is speaking about how we are different in our thought process due to the PMS that we encounter every month. Okay, you see, he goes on to say that we women are so intelligent that we can lead a wise man astray. So he's not putting us down as women in regards to intelligence. No other creature can be more conniving and manipulative than we women can be. We know how to use our charm. We know how to turn it on and turn it off to get what we want. Okay, so this is not a hadith that's downgrading women and their thought process. It's just speaking about how we're more emotional. So this is why the prophet tells us to give in charity more, because we might end up, becoming so emotionally distraught that we may say things that we may regret later. We can be very ungrateful towards the things our husbands do. We can even become ungrateful towards Allah. We also suffer with jealousy. We suffer with all kinds of emotional issues. But by giving in charity, that helps to purify us of these emotional issues. It helps to tame your jealousy. It helps to tame, your ungratefulness. It helps to tame these things down. So that's why the prophet encouraged us to give in charity more. So now let's open this hadith up for discussion.
Assalamu alaikum. Oh,
go ahead, Sister Ami.
I'm glad you explained that like that, because it's a part of me that really gets makes me think that's saying they really should reword that and put that in a better way, more like how you explained it, talking about a woman is less intelligent and all of that, just reminds me of how they felt about women back in the prophet's time, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, before he came to give us what we needed to be.
Yeah, well, you have to understand those thoughts about women still exist today. We see it every day here in our website on Zoom. Look how many men, find things to hate us for here at Sunnahfollowers, the makeup, because we're beautiful. You can't even take a picture of yourself and your grandchild playing with apps without people coming behind you, stalking you, and trying to harm you or critiquing you. So the attitude that the world has about women, that's existed ever since Allah made Eve, and that's never going to change. But with these hadiths, the thing that I always warn you guys of is, remember, the hadiths were narrated in Fusha Arabic. And the men who tried to translate them, they did the best they could do. But understand, this is the English meaning. And oftentimes, just like with the Quran, those words do not translate into English well, because there are words in Arabic that don't exist in English. And believe it or not, many Arabs don't speak Fusha either. If they read those hadiths in the Arabic language, they don't understand what they're saying either. So they look to the English. But, so if you were to read this hadith in Fusha, it would not say that women are ignorant. It doesn't use the Arabic Fusha word for ignorant. It doesn't say any of that. But it's just the way the people tried to translate it into English, and that's the best they could do. So that's why it's important for every Muslim listening to me to understand you cannot teach yourself this religion. You have to learn from the people of knowledge. And the people of knowledge are people who understand, first of all, the Arabic language. Now, I ain't talking about the slang that is spoken today, but the classical Arabic, the Fusha. And the reason why I can break these hadiths down to you in meaning is because my teacher is not just a scholar of the Quran, not just a scholar of the hadith, but he's also a scholar of the Fusha, the classical Arabic. And he's able to break it down to me in English terms, where I in turn can come and explain it to you better. So in this hadith, never has it ever said women are ignorant or women lack intelligence. It's talking about PMS. It's talking about our emotional state, but there's not an English word that would translate from that to from Arabic to that. And I'm talking Fusha. So we have to be careful. But as far as the views that people have about women, those views are never going to disappear. The prophet's wife Aisha spent her lifetime after the death of the prophet. And after the battle of the camel, she spent the rest of her life trying to set the record right about women in Islam. Okay? And not just her, but even the prophet's stepdaughters. They spent their lives teaching Islam and trying to set the record right about women and women's rights. And it's something that I'm doing and other female dayas such as myself have done, but we're going to fail at it. Because the prophet said Islam will become further and further away from the way it was supposed to be and will revert back to how it used to be in the beginning, to the point where women will be walking around the Kaaba naked. So, women's rights and women's issues is going to be stripped down anyway. But that's why it's important that females, Muslim women, need to learn Islam correctly from the proper teachers, the proper sources. Every Muslim woman should know the meaning of that hadith. Every Muslim woman should know her worth. Every Muslim woman should know her rights, her roles, what's lawful for her, what isn't, and not depend on social media to tell her, and not depend on unqualified people to tell her. Because the world has always wanted women to think that we are the source of evil. They want you to think that Eve is the reason we're not in paradise. So that's nothing new. Now, anyone else?
Assalamualaikum.
Go ahead. Walaikum salam.
That is so true. This is one of my favorite hadiths because there are so many lessons in it. There's more than one. It does talk about the woman. It does talk about, I remember reading about that day when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam made that statement to the women, and one of them, because of the lack of autonomy at that time before Prophet Muhammad, and she said, when he said hell would have more women in it than men, she said, is it because this woman, I can't remember her name, but she said, is it because we are women? Because that's the way they had been treated. But he said, no, not because you're a woman, or I should say female, but because of, and he said, because of the way that you talk to your husbands, the way you curse, the way he talked, and the way you are uncharitable.
On our emotional state. The bottom line is we're emotional, and every woman can relate to that. He's not saying we're not intelligent. We're very intelligent. We're highly manipulative to the point we can lead a man to hell and back. But it's our emotional state. Our emotions are here and there. I can be in a good mood right now. Check me out next week. Check me out tomorrow. We change. We're more emotional than men are. and we become attached to this world more than men do. We suffer with things that men don't suffer with. That's just how Allah made us. We complement each other. Men are less emotional, but they need us to learn how to develop and nurture emotion. So we complement. So like I say, the whole hadith is not about intelligence, it's about emotionalism. And the prophet explained that, and the women accepted it and understood it and went on. It was no big deal with them because they understood what he was saying. Like I said, that these women knew the nature of themselves. Muslim women today don't understand the nature of themselves. So they get offended when they hear the truth about themselves. The truth hurts. Yeah, go ahead, Sister Aisha.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
And this is a great hadith because, nowadays we have women who are like into feminism and stuff, So if they saw this hadith, they would have said a lot of stuff about it. And I know so many people who say so many stuff. They're like, oh my God, why do we have to give more charity when they don't even know the meaning behind this hadith? And as like you said, we are emotionally, I feel it too. And I'm a woman myself. And I'm not no feminist. There ain't no feminism in Islam. But this hadith is like speaks really well on it. And it just shows us, yes, it is true. We are different. Like our mouth is going to lead us to hell. And it's the truth. I see how many times, what is it called? I see how many times we all speak without thinking sometimes. So this is just a good hadith. I just wanted to put in there that, that explains it really well.
Yeah, the women that get offended behind this hadith are the same women that suffer with jealousy, are the same women that get offended whenever the truth is presented. The women that get angry with this hadith are the women out there who think that I am harsh, that think that Layla Nashiba has issues. These are women that have a problem accepting the reality and the truth about themselves. And in order to save yourself from the hellfire, the prophet taught us we have to know the nature of yourself. How can you save yourself if you don't understand the nature of yourself? For those of us who understand what this hadith is saying, because we have no problems admitting the truth about ourselves, we're the ones living our lives trying to not be one of those women of hell. We're the ones that do give in charity. So the people that have a problem with this are the women that don't want to accept the reality and the truth about themselves. And unfortunately, there's a lot of women out there like that. And that's another reason why the hellfire will have more women than men, because women are less likely to accept the truth than men are. A man will say, okay, they'll submit. You see it here on Facebook. When I'm giving a class and teaching the truth, if a man types something on the screen that's wrong and I correct him, what do? 9 times out of 10, the men yield and say, thank you, Sister Layla, you were right. But if it's a woman, she'll sit here and want to argue and fight and push and stalk and do all kind of slander, because that's just the nature of a woman. Women don't want to accept the truth and admit defeat. Whereas a man will say, okay, I admit the defeat and go on. Okay, anyone else?
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
So what I take from this hadith is just like everyone else mentioned and you mentioned, nowadays, as just like you said, as women, we have a hard time accepting the truth, and if a person tells you the wrong you're doing, they don't want to accept it. They're being self-centered, like everything's about them. They make everything about them, like, oh, I'm never wrong. Like, you're a human. Allah made you. Like, we make mistakes. It's okay to say I'm sorry and I'm wrong. You don't know something, just you don't know it. Like, you don't have to be, you don't have to feel like you're better than other people just because, if you wrong someone, just tell them, hey, I wronged you and I apologize. But some people find it so hard to do such things, and I feel like that's where you have to know your strengths and weaknesses as a woman. Because if you have a knowledgeable teacher and she's telling you, you ask her a question and she tells you, oh, what you're doing is wrong, and here's the proof, And then as women, what do we do? No, oh well, is there another source where like you're trying to find different ways to get out of the situation? You're trying to find ways that the situation supports you more than what Allah says, you know. And I feel like that's just a shame as a woman. And I just feel like we have to get it together because ain't nobody trying to. That's what I like to say.
Exactly. Alhamdulillah. Yes, guys. So it's not a hadith that we should get offended behind. Like I said, and we have to be careful with the transliteration of the meaning. Like I said, a lot of times these hadiths are translated into English using bad English terminology because there's some words in Arabic that don't exist in English. So the guys that did the translating, they did the best that they can do, but oftentimes the meaning gets lost. So it's not a hadith to offend anyone. It's just a hadith speaking about the nature of a woman. We're more emotional than men. So that's why the Prophet encouraged us to give in charity more. You know, the more good deeds we do, it helps to compensate for the bad qualities about ourselves. Okay, so let's put that hadith up one last time for everyone to ponder. And the source of this hadith is Sahih Bukhari. The Prophet went out to the women after finishing the prayer, and he delivered a sermon and told them to give in charity. He said, "O women, give in charity, because I have seen that the majority of the people of hell are you women." He said, "Why? Because you curse a lot and you're ungrateful to your husbands. And I haven't seen anyone more emotional to the point where it can affect your thinking than women are. Oh, women, some of you can lead a wise man astray." And then he left. And also the second part is when Ibn Masud's wife came and said, "Oh, Prophet of Allah, you know, I have a piece of jewelry that I was going to give in charity, but my husband, Ibn Masud," and by the way, Ibn Masud was a poor man. He said, "My husband told me that he was more deserving of that money to buy food and clothing for him and the kids than an outsider." And the Prophet told her, "Your husband told you right." And he goes on in another hadith to explain that whenever a woman does contribute and help her husband to provide and maintain the family, it serves as a blessing for her. Okay, so again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining and participating in this session of our Hadith class. Please make sure you guys look at the schedule when I'm going to post it up tomorrow. And also, please make sure that everybody purchases our dua bear. And I've been advertising our bear. This bear was designed by one of my students, Sister Dina. And this is a wonderful bear because if you push his paws, he will recite the 4 coups. He will also recite the morning supplications and also the evening supplications. And he comes with a beautifully illustrated book. You can go to duabear.com, DUABEAR.com, and order your bear before they sell out. So again, I want to thank everybody for joining. Inshallah, make sure everybody's here tomorrow for the classes. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.